United States of America, the Jewish history over here. We're on part 6 already. We're going to explore towards the end of the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s era, really the end of the 20th century era. And probably after this, there'll be another 2 more parts, I would guess, but I'm not too sure because it's such a big topic. And whatever I'm going to do inside this series, it's going to be impossible to cover everything within regards to the country because it's just so much content to actually state over. And so we're going to try and do some justice. We're going to try and speak about key figures that there were in, let's just say, in America, what was going on at that point in time. So much to cover. We concluded yesterday speaking about Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, who was a huge integral figure in America, and he passed away in 1983. So we concluded yesterday's video speaking very much about him and let's just say the roles he left in of itself. And he was very involved with many different organizations. We talked about how he came from descent from great rabbis. So let's speak about more rabbis over here at the moment. Let's start off this video. I want to speak about a few key Sephardi rabbis. One key Syrian rabbi in America, especially during the 1900s, respectively in the heart of the mid-1900s, was a great rabbi named Rabbi Matlub Abadi. A very, very great rabbi. I think the rabbi we've spoken about here on this series in of itself, he actually goes back to the late 19th century. He was actually born in the late 19th century in Aleppo in Syria. He was a master when it came to knowledge with regards to Torah, even at a very early age. From his youth, it became apparent that he would become someone brilliant. I think when he was 20 years of age, he would emigrate to Israel and would learn higher learning. He was actually quite close to Rab Ezra Atiyah, who would go on to become, I believe, a Rosh Yeshiva of the famous Yeshivat Porat Yosef, if I'm not mistaken. And he would get married to, Rabbanit Esther Nahum, the daughter of Rabbi Ezra Nahum, who was an outstanding man. Ezra Nahum was in the Bukhari Jewish community. In the earlier part of the 20th century, Rabbi Abadi would eventually emigrate to the United States of America and would start, let's just say, and improve his spiritual journey over there inside the community in of itself. He would start teaching Talmud Torah, I think in Bensonhurst, and will become a principal over there. His Torah education helped create, let's say, a great foundation to many of the youth in which, let's say, it helped set them on the course to live a religious and traditional life. Now, I think many of the elderly members, I think in current day, have been talking about, giving him credit for molding their, let's say, religious backgrounds in of itself. Now, he was, I think, a member of Magen David Bet Din in of itself. He was part of the Bet Din structure, the Jewish court structure over there. He never accepted any official rabbinic title or pulpit, let's say, assignment in the community, the Syrian community. His main goal was, and would actually remain steadfast, to teach Torah and educate the community. He had a saying, I think, that he is chained by the Talmud, the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, and the top Sephardic authorities, and can't deviate from their decisions in itself. I think it was in Magen David of Bensonhurst in the 1930s, he would begin his famous Shabbat afternoon presentation classes, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with very prominent and learned laymen, let's say, of the community in himself, the Balabatim in himself. The class would grow and continue moving, and eventually would move to Shari Tzion. I think for 40 years, Rabbi Abadi had a great core students, as I say, that would learn from him. All these prominent members, it's very key, would become founders and leaders of many major community institutions, especially in the Syrian community, synagogues, Talmud Torahs, yeshivot, respectively. And the rabbi, with his brilliant guidance, assisted them, especially behind the scenes. And I think many will become, and their children, descendants, become very prominent later on. I think at the end of his life, he wrote a Magen Ba'adi. This was a book on Torah law, on halakha. Come on, 1970, he was 83 years of age. Sadly, he passed away in Brooklyn. And I think his funeral was actually held at Magen David at the end, where many of the prominent rabbis and main leaders would go there. And there was a huge, huge attendance. I think about more than 1,000 people, if I'm not mistaken. I think even in current day, the Rabbi's Sefarim and his personal writings are kept safely in a special Rabbi Matlub Abadi library in Shari Tzion that has to be pointed over. And he's a key figure at that point in time. Now, another key Sephardic figure, more with regards to the Spanish Portuguese side, in America itself was a British-born American rabbi, someone named Rabbi David de Sola Pool. Who was he? He lived between 1885 to 1970. He would go on to become, let's say, one of the leading 20th century Sephardic rabbis in the United States of America. He came from a great rabbinic family in itself. He'll be associated with the famous congregation She'erit Yisrael in New York City, and he was actually born in London. We've spoken about him on various occasions before. He came from a great line of families from the De Sola family, which goes back all the way to medieval Spain. His grandparents, great-grandparents, was Rabbi David Aaron de Sola, very, very famous rabbi. Also Rabbinate Rebecca Meldola. And I think his great-grandfather was Chacham Rafael Meldola, who was, I believe, a chief rabbi in the Spanish-Portuguese community in the United Kingdom at one stage. He's also related to other famous rabbis, Rabbi Abraham de Sola, Rabbi Henry Pereira Mendes, and Rabbi Frederick de Sola Mendes, really great rabbis at the time. He was actually a student in the University of London, and he would get a doctorate in ancient languages. I think in 1907 he would become the assistant rabbi of Congregation She'erit Yisrael, also known as Spanish-Portuguese Synagogue, located in New York City. He would serve as assistant rabbi under Rabbi Henry Pereira Mendes until 1919. And he would, I think he would actually work in mandatory Palestine, I think, before 1921, and become, I think he would come back at one stage in time to become senior rabbi, and he had a very decorated history. And very much we can talk about him. It's reported over on D-Day during the World War II, Rabbi Paul delivered broadcast remarks in support of the brave troops fighting overseas. He would serve as rabbi until 1955, and then was a rabbi emeritus for the rest of his life. He was also, it's interesting, with regards to, let's say, the topic of Zionism, he followed in the footsteps of his cousin, Rabbi Henry Pereira Mendes, advocated for Jewish nationhood. He and his wife, Rabbanit Tamar, were leaders in Hadassah's Young Judea youth movement, and Rabbanit Tamar went, I believe, on to become the national president of Hadassah, striving there to support for Zionism in general. I think in 1990, Rabbi Paul will take leave of his position and went with his wife to Palestine to do relief work at that point in time, and assuming charge of, let's say, post-war relief and reconstruction for the World Zionist Organization and American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. Rabbi Paul and his wife stayed 3 years until before returning to the rabbinical position in New York. As Nazism grew in the 1930s, Rabbi Paul spoke out increasingly of the need for a Jewish homeland and called on American Jewry to take action over there. So he was also a publisher. He would publish many books, and he edited the Sephardic prayer book for the Union of Sephardic Congregations in 1954, and the Ashkenazic prayer book for the Rabbinical Council of America, and wrote various different other books, we can say, in of itself. Important books about Jewish history in colonial America, including, most famously, the Portraits Etched in Stone, Early Jewish Settlers, 1682 to 1831. And together with his wife, Rabbanit Tamar de Solapol, an Old Faith in New York World portrait of She'erit Yisrael, chronicling between 1654 to 1954, if I'm not mistaken. He was honored with many different accolades. I think he held honorary degrees of Doctor of Divinity, Doctor of Hebrew Letters, and Doctor of Humane Letters, and Doctor of Sacred Theology, if I'm not mistaken. And I think come 2012, the American Sephardi Federation would put a special small exhibition of de Sola Pool's correspondence, respectively. Now let's speak about another. I think he would have an academic, I think, as a son, someone named Itiel de Sola Pool. Who was he? Let's just speak about him for a minute. He lived between 1917 to 1984. He was an academic. He was a key figure in America. He was celebrated in the field of social sciences, for example, information technology. He would write a book, Technologies of Freedom, in 1983, let's just say, talking about digital electronics. And very interesting enough. So he was, I think, a son of his. Let's speak a bit about the famous American Sephardi Federation now over here in this series. What was the American Sephardi Foundation? Now, anyone tuning in live at the moment, please subscribe to the channel over here, and welcome if you're new over here. Very interesting enough. So so anyone that's here live, you've just joined the channel, welcome to our community. We do a lot of Torah content here and provide a lot of information. So the American Sephardic Foundation, what is it? It's a founding member, let's say, of the Center for Jewish History. It's a non-profit Jewish organization that strengthens and organizes religious and cultural activities of the Sephardic Jewish community, preserving Sephardic heritage, tradition, culture, and assists in publication, let's say, of books and literature dealing with Sephardic culture and federation. The federation also works to further awareness of the former existence of large communities in the Muslim and Arab world over here. The federation exists to promote and preserve the spiritual, historical, cultural and social traditions of all Sephardic communities as an integral part, let's say, of Jewish heritage in the United States of America. The goal of its founding conference was to dedicate itself to revitalize the Sephardic culture and heritage in the United States and to aid the underprivileged population in the State of Israel. The Federation's annual conferences also published a number of reports about the work of the organization and issues related to Sephardic Jewry in the USA, and held various locations throughout the USA and serve as a cultural reminder of Middle East and African roots of the movement. I think it's got a role, in Center for Jewish History, and especially for people in the Iberian Peninsula, North Africa, Balkans, Middle East and Asia. Come with the year 2000, I think, when the Center for Jewish History opened to the public, the Federation would go on to open what was the only dedicated Sephardic exhibition space in North America in the center's new location. One of the most important functions of the Federation was its, let's say, role in the lives of Sephardic youth over there. I think Kamot in November 1973, they would have an ASF youth convention attended by 450 people. The Federation's youth education programs also helped to ensure the continued growth and vibrancy of Sephardic culture. I think when the US Senate began to work on the issue of Jews fleeing Arab areas in the Middle East, of the Federation was involved with research about more than 800,000 Jews that chose to leave their homes at the time. In a connection with a number of other groups worldwide, the Federation was involved in efforts to obtain information from those affected. Now, I think the American Sephardi Federation is a founder of the New York Sephardi Jewish Film Festival, which honors important Sephardic personalities with Pomegranate Award. I think since 2017, they have also been hosting the annual New York Ladino Day, which aims to celebrate and elevate Ladino culture in New York and throughout the world over there. So very interesting. We can talk more about the history within regards to that, but that's maybe for another class in of itself. And let's speak about more key rabbis at that point in time in America, in, let's say, the to the latter parts of 1900s. Obviously, we have to mention about Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He lived between April the 5th, 1902, and passed away on the 12th of June in 1994, if I'm not mistaken. That was the 3rd of Tammuz. Naturally, he was known as the Lubavitcher Rebbe, especially from the Chabad Lubavitch movement, considered, let's say, one of the most influential Jewish leaders during the 20th century, respectively. He was, I believe, born in modern Ukraine. He passed away in Manhattan in New York. He was buried in Queens, if I'm not mistaken. His wife was Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka Schneerson in of itself. His father was Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Schneerson, if I'm not mistaken. He was the leader of Chabad Lubavitch movement. He took, let's say, just using the terminology described in Wikipedia, an insular Hasidic group that almost came to an end, let's say, obviously with the Holocaust, and transformed it into one of the most influential movements in religious Jewry. There was an international network of over 5,000 educational and social centers, kindergartens, schools, even drug rehabilitation centers, care homes. He published teachings in field for more than 400 volumes, and noted to contributions to Jewish continuity and religious, let's say, thought, as well as his wide-ranging contributions to traditional Torah scholarship. He's a pioneer, one of the pioneers of Jewish outreach, without a doubt, and much can be said with regards to him. I want to speak a bit about a famous political figure over here, very famous one, someone named Meir Kahane. He lived between 1932 and he was murdered in 1990, November the 5th. He was also Israeli. He was Orthodox, ordained rabbi. Let's say many would describe him as ultra-nationalistic politician. He was a founder of the Israeli political party Kach, whose ideology, I think, is obviously seen by some of the political groups, such as say under Otzma Yehudit here in modern day. So I think he was murdered in Manhattan, if I'm not mistaken, in 1990 November. He'd have 4 children. His wife's name was, he get married to his wife Libby, Rebbetzin Libby, in 1956. I think he would learn in Brooklyn College, in New York Law School, and New York University, interesting enough. And he would receive his education in New York and Brooklyn, I believe. And if I'm not mistaken, he would go on to get an MA. In 1968, he would found the Jewish Defense League in New York City, a key organization there, whose self-described purpose, as I say, was to fight anti-Semitism. I think he was one of the members of JDL, and very interesting enough. I think it was in 1971 he moved to Israel and became a citizen, where he initiated protests, I think, calling for the expulsion of Palestinian citizens of Israel and Palestinians of Israeli various territories, and part of Eretz Israel. I think in the same year he would found the famous Kach Party. I don't think they would gain any seats initially. In 1980, he was, I think, arrested on multiple occasions. Also, we have to point over, and he would write a book, especially "They Must Go." I think in the early 1980s. In 1984, his Kach Party gained a seat in the Knesset, and he would take that seat at that point in time. I think in 1988 he was running for the Knesset, and I think he was polling quite high, but then he was later banned. And I think famously, he would speak all over the world. He was a famous outreach speaker all over America. And I think in 1990, while he was giving a speech to an audience for the Orthodox Jewish community in Brooklyn, he would this was a talk where he'd urge the American Jews to emigrate to Israel. He was assassinated at that point in time, and Robert Kahana was buried eventually in West Jerusalem. He publicized, let's say, an ideology throughout the United States. He wanted really to enforce, let's say, halacha, Jewish law, as codified by Maimonides. He hoped Israel would eventually adopt it to its state law. That was one of his things. He proposed numerous laws. I don't think any of them passed, but he emphasized Jewish in public schools. That was one of them. He wanted to reduce Israel's bureaucracy, forbid sexual relations between Jews and non-Jews. So he was really very much against, I think, intermarriage, obviously, and end cultural meetings between Jewish and Arab students. And he would, so many different things. I recommend everyone to look at what he did. And very, very interesting enough. So he endorsed, obviously, the annexation of West Bank and Gaza Strip to become part of a greater Israel. That's something else we have to point out. Now, another key, let's say, going back to Sephardic rabbis, Rabbi Joseph Feuer, he was a key rabbi, especially in the 1990s in America. He lived between 1934 to 2020. June the 9th, 2020. He was a chacham, a teacher and a scholar, and he was a rabbi, I believe, in the Syrian Jewish community in Brooklyn for many years. He was also, I believe, a professor of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Remember, that would go on afterwards to big things. He would actually become a bar. I think he would actually sue them, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of JTS, if I'm not mistaken. And later on, he'll go to Bar Ilan University. He'll become a professor there in the Tanya Academic College also. He was actually born in Buenos Aires in Argentina. He was part of a Damascene Syrian Jewish community over there. He was tutored in Jewish subject by great Sephardi Rabbanim, if I'm not mistaken. And I think his father was Eliyahu Fruyo, if I'm not mistaken. He would garner greatness in Talmud, Jewish law, rabbinics. And one of his rabbis was Rabbi Eliyahu Suli, Rabbi Jamil Harari, and Rabbi Aharona Kohen, if I'm not mistaken. And they would provide outstanding education. Interesting enough, in 1955, while he was in his late teens, he was accepted to the Bet Midrash Gavoa, I believe, in Lakewood, New Jersey. That was actually founded by the famous Lithuanian Talmudist, Rabbi Aaron Kotler, who was mentioned about on various occasions before. He would leave the yeshiva. I think he wanted to really fortify his knowledge in Torah, and he would study afterwards a Semitic philology, accompanied by, if I'm not mistaken, and very, very interesting, especially learning very much about the Spanish Inquisition. And he would spend time in Harvard University and Semitic philology over there, university. Very much. He'd be very, very well educated in various parts. Let's just say he will receive a degree in Semitic philology and an MA in Semitic languages. In 1963, he received smicha, rabbinic ordination, from Rabbi Sulman Haggai Abudi, the rabbi we've spoken about on various occasions before. He was the head of the Bet Din, the Jewish court of Jerusalem. And he would start teaching, I think famously, at a Sephardic Achi Egezer congregation, an open yeshiva in Brooklyn. So we're going to speak more about that in due course. He would bring many people back to halachic observance and create, let's say, a renaissance in the learning of Torah in accordance with Sephardic tradition. I think someone named Ralph Betesh, later one of the leaders of the Jewish community, recounts how for the first time people heard of great Sephardic luminaries such as Rabbi Don Isaac Abarbanel, Rabbi Ibn Pakuda, Rabbi Moshe Hefetz, respectively really famous rabbis of their time. His influence in bringing the younger generation back to traditions of halacha and Torah was very substantial, and many of the community's lay and religious leaders were his students, most notably famous people like Miki Keri, Moshe Shama, as Wikipedia is. Rabbi Moshe Shama would be people very much speaking about that. So I think through the advice in 1967 of Rabbi David Soledapol and Rabbi Matlub Abadi from Aleppo, very interesting. He would seek them for advice. I think eventually he would accept a faculty position in Jewish Theological Seminary in America. He'd be quite close, I think, with Abraham Joshua Heschel, if I'm not mistaken, and he would leave the school in 1985. Because I think at that point in time, because they would start ordaining women to the rabbinic school, he would say no way, he wasn't on for that later on. And reports over here, according to Wikipedia, Rabbi Fayol would sue the Jewish Theological Seminary for breach of contract, arguing that by admitting women in such a manner, the seminary was in fact forcing him to resign. I think at that point in time, I don't think everyone was so happy he was teaching at the JTS, Jewish Theological Seminary. And he would receive, I think, support of Chief Rabbi of Syrian Jewish community of the time in Brooklyn, Rabbi Jacob Kassin, would sign an open letter attesting to Rabbi Furer's religious standing, if I'm not mistaken. And I think later on Rabbi Sholem Messas will bring about a Bet Din, if I'm not mistaken. And Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu will also attest and say that he was a great Chacham, if I'm not mistaken. I think he would take on various other positions later on. He'd be a visiting professor at the Spertus Institute for Jewish Learning and Leadership in Chicago. He would teach there until 1993, it's reported over. I think he would teach Talmud part-time at Bar Ilan University in Ramat Gan in Israel. And I think he would teach law at Netanya Academic College, which was founded in 1994. In Israel, he dedicated himself to teaching and writing and occasionally taught in various Sephardic communities over there. He was close to other various rabbis, like Rabbi David Shalush, for example. He was a guest speaker in his synagogue. He was then the chief rabbi, I believe, of Netanya. Also Rabbi Ezra Bar Shalom, who then resided in Ramat Aviv, respectively, over there. Friends, we are doing a live video recording the history of the American Jewry, the American Jewish community. If you're new here to the channel, please subscribe. I'm going to take a short minute break, so please subscribe in the meantime to the channel, and I'll be back in 1 minute, friends, over here. So please, in the meantime, just wait, I'll be 1 minute. Okay, thanks everyone for holding on over here as we are exploring the history of the American Jewish community history. So if in the meantime you have subscribed to the channel while you're waiting, I really appreciate it. Let's continue speaking about more key rabbis in the United States during the 1900s, respectively. Another key Sephardi rabbi was someone named Rabbi David Shirabani. He would live actually between 1920 to 6th of August 1985. He was a Sephardic chief rabbi in Columbia, and then later on, I think this was from the early 1950s to 1978. Then later on, he would become a rabbi in Miami, Florida, in the United States of America. He'd become a key rabbi in America, in Miami. He would die 64 years of age in 1985. Let's explore a bit about him. It's interesting, he came from great rabbinic pedigree. His father was Rabbi Yoshua Shirabani, and his mother was Rabbanit Masuda Shirabani in of itself. He was a Jewish leader. He was, I think, a Jewish leader before him was Rabbi Miguel Atias, and it will be succeeded by Rabbi Yehuda Ben Amu, if I'm not mistaken. He was actually born in Israel, mandatory Palestine, to a Kabbalist, famous Rabbi Yoshua Shirabani. This family originated from Iraq, from a line of great prominent rabbinic figures. I think they would emigrate to Jerusalem from Baghdad in 1903, and Rabbi Shirabani would study in the famous Yeshivat Porat Yosef and receive a smicha in the famous Chazon Ish. Now, it's interesting. Rabbi Shirabani was the first Sephardic rabbi to head the first Sephardic synagogue in Bogota in Colombia. And I think, come on, 1952, a philanthropist, someone named Ovadia Shayo, would visit Porat Yosef Yeshiva and asked the Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Ben Zion Meir Hai Uziel, to send a rabbi to his congregation in Colombia. Rabbi Ben Zion Meir Hai Uziel recommended Rabbi David Shirabani, and he would be appointed the chief rabbi of Colombia. And I think in Colombia he would go on to establish Talmud Torah, a branch of Bnei Akiva. He served as president of the World Hebrew Alliance and was active in the Zionistic organization. He was a lecturer also at National University of Columbia. He would later on be, I think, offered a position in the rabbinate in Tel Aviv. I think he would refuse the offer, if I'm not mistaken. And he was connected to many of the great rabbinic leaders all over the world. And especially, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rav Moshe Feinstein, also a great American rabbi. And it's reported over Rabbi Shirabani would give great support to the hostages held during the 1980 Dominican Republic embassy siege in Bogota, if I'm not mistaken, in 1980. So he was a key rabbi over there, and he published many different works, including the Haggadah for Passover, which was, I think, in Hebrew Spanish, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the Haggadah was published actually in 1960 and commissioned artwork from Holocaust survivor and Colombian cartoonist Peter Aldo. If I'm not mistaken, he was very involved at the end of his life in America, working as a rabbi, especially in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. So he was key American rabbinic figure. Now, I want to speak a bit about the famous Sephardic Bikur Cholim. Now, we did speak about it yesterday, actually, so I'm not going to speak so much about it now. We'll just do a bit of Chazara for it. The Bikur Cholim, as we mentioned about yesterday, is an Orthodox Jewish congregation and synagogue in Seward Park in Seattle, Washington, following Sephardic tradition. Also another key organization. And I think it was established in 1902, as we mentioned before. And I think it was connected, known as Bikur Cholim Habat Akim Congregation. So we spoke about it yesterday, and very much so, about the population, how it will really increase. And one of the biggest populations was in Seattle, Washington, at that point in time, where, especially in 1902, the Jews would actually arrive in Seattle from various places, including Istanbul, Rostow, respectively. We spoke about how great rabbis would arrive in Seattle, including Rabbi Shlomo Asoz, we'd like to speak now, and then his brother, Rabbi Isaac Asoz, later on. And we talked about how roads will come about and establish synagogues, congregation, Ezra, Basarot. Yesterday, Rabbi Chaim Nachum would visit, as I mentioned yesterday. A key rabbi over there mentioned yesterday was Rabbi Abraham Maimon, who actually Rabbi Maimon claimed he was descended from Maimonides. He was a rabbi in Tekidag, if I'm not mistaken, and had great interest in moving to Seattle. And he was a famous rabbi. I think he would take on various importances over there. There was a Seattle Progressive Fraternity was founded over there, I think, at that point in time. I think he was he was a key figure in of itself, Rabbi Maimon. I think we spoke about him yesterday. And then there was other famous rabbis over there. And I think he would later on return, Rabbi Solomon Maimon, after a period of... he was actually the son of Rabbi Abraham Maimon. So Rabbi Solomon Maimon was his son. And he actually spent 8 years in Yeshiva University and was ordained, and was the first Sephardic rabbi ordained in the United States reported over. That's very, very interesting. But I think we spoke about this yesterday, so I don't want to go on too much. There's so much that we can speak about at the moment. Let's just say that I think it's important to get the entire breadth, let's just say, in general, of American Jewry later on. There's I think it was 2009, later on, way later on, in Seattle, Rabbi Simon Ben Zaken would become a prominent rabbi over there, bringing huge religious skills. He was a mohel, a famous mohel he was, and I think he would gain a dayanut at one stage in time, and he was a sofer. He was a rabbi that would be a calligrapher of ketubot also, and was a famous person. There was Samuel Ben Arura, if I'm not mistaken, another really famous people. So there's a lot that we can say within regards to the Seattle Jewish community in itself. But very, very interesting. Okay, so let's continue over here. Friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history over here of American Jewry, especially during the mid to later parts of the 1900s over here. And please, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please subscribe to our community, as we are exploring much of the great history of the Jewish community over here, friends. So everyone, welcome, and please subscribe. Okay, another key rabbi in America was Rabbi Solomon Gaon, especially in the Sephardi community. Once again, he was a chacham of the Spanish-Portuguese community. He lived between 1912 to 1994. So who was he? He was born in Travnik, I think Bosnia and Herzegovina, in 1912. He studied in yeshiva in Sarajevo. Unfortunately, both his parents were murdered in the Holocaust. He would receive a rabbinic ordination in Jews College, and come on 1949 become the Hacham, the chief rabbi of the Sephardic congregations of the British Commonwealth. And I think Alan Makota himself, he's credited with reviving a declining community, and he would then go on to become a key figure in America. He became involved, I think initially, I'm not sure if it was initially or not, on a part-time basis with Yeshiva University in New York, and was integral in founding Sephardic Studies program over there, respectively. He would do great overseas activities in of itself, and all throughout the time. So that's very, very interesting. He would move to New York. Robert Gaon was connected very much to the Spanish-Portuguese Jewish community of She'erit Yisrael, and he would deliver a main address at the dedication of the first synagogue consecrated in Spain since, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the expulsion of the Jews of Spain in 1492. He would become professor at Yeshiva University in 1976, found and directed Jacob E. Safra Institute of Sephardic Studies. He served as a president of the Union of Sephardic Congregations of the United States of America and Canada. He was a principal and representative of the Sephardic people. This was on, if I'm not mistaken, March 31st, 1992. There was famous events at the Bet Yaakov Synagogue in Madrid, and that was attended by King Juan Carlos of Spain. And he revoked the 1492 edict of expulsion. Rabbi Gaon, or Chacham Rabbi Gaon, received Spain's Prince of Asturias Award in 1992 for his lifetime of efforts seeking renewal of relationships between among Sephardim and Spanish people. He presided in 1991 when Jewish services were held for the first time in 500 years in Zaragoza, respectively. He would there would be numerous articles and sermons. He would author, for example, a prayer book in 1969, the Haggadah, if I'm not mistaken, in 1975 in London, a book of prayer for the Spanish and Portuguese Jewish congregation in 1980. A Del Fuego, Sephardim and the Holocaust, he would actually write in 1987. The influence of Catholic theologian Alfonso Tostado, 1993, in Minchat Shlomo book, a commentary on the book of prayer for the Sephardic and Spanish and Portuguese Jews in the Union of Sephardic Congregations in 1990, also most notably. Let's speak about more key rabbis that have shaped the Sephardic Jewry in America before we're going to go on to more general rabbis in America. Rabbi Mark Angel. He was a key rabbi, especially late 1900s. Still is a key rabbi. I believe he was born in 1945. He's currently 80 years of age. He was now he's the emeritus rabbi of Congregation She'erit Yisrael, and he had a position over there since 1969. So he was a key rabbi there in of itself. He was educated, I believe, in Yeshiva University, if I'm not mistaken, and he would get his smicha, rabbinic ordination from Riyadh, respectively. So that's something else that we have to point out over there. So that's very interesting. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community over here. And welcome. And we do a lot of great content, let's just say, here on this channel over here. So thanks everyone for watching, and welcome. We've got great content here. So who is Rabbi Angel? So he was born, talking about the famous Seattle community. He was born from Seattle's Sephardic Jewish community. His ancestors obviously are Ottoman Sephardim from Turkey and Rhodes. And he would grow up speaking Ladino at home. He'll receive a BA, a PhD, and a smicha from Yeshiva University. He has also an MA, I think, in English literature, if I'm not mistaken, the City College of New York. He received the Bernard Revel Award in Religion and Religious Education. He was president of the Rabbinical Council of America and a member of the editorial board of its journal Tradition. So many prominent positions, let's just say, over various different points of time. So very interesting. I think more recently, in 2007, he established the Institute for Jewish Ideas and Ideals, if I'm not mistaken. He directs the Institute and edits a journal, Conversations, which appears 3 times per year. Also, I think he might be connected to Open Orthodoxy, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he's connected to Rabbi Avi Weiss. They will co-found an international rabbinic fellowship, the Open Orthodox Rabbinic Group, to counter what they see as a rightward shift in Orthodox community over there and reduce centralization of rabbinical authority, though they remain RCA members in themselves. So that he would write many works he's written, including the Sephardic Haggadah, a book on the Jews of Rhodes, a Latin America Sephardic experience, the orphaned adult, Voices in Exile, book in 1991, the Essential Paleo, an encyclopedia of ethical Jewish living in 1991, and Loving Truth and Peace, the grand religious worldview of Rabbi Ben-Zion Uziel, who was the chief rabbi of Israel, and various other books also. He, in 1988, received the National Jewish Book Award in Jewish Thought, the category for the orphaned adults confronting the death of a parent. Unfortunately, no one wants to experience that. We'll hope Moshiach will come and we'll all live forever. And very, very interesting. So now Rabbi Chaim Angel, now the key figure is more towards in the 2000s itself. Maybe we should have mentioned him maybe in the coming class, but we'll mention him now. I think he was a son. He was obviously an American rabbi. He's also an academic, an editor who is a national scholar of the Institute for Jewish Ideas and Ideals, obviously founded by his father, Rabbi Mark Angel. He's taught biblical courses, I think undergraduate, graduate, and rabbinical students at Yeshiva University since 1996. He also serves on the Tanakh faculty of Beit Midrash of Teaneck, and is a Tanakh educational scholar at the Shivat Ben Porat Yosef in Paramus in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. He would become a rabbi in Congregation She'erit Israel between 1995 to 2013, and a scholar, the rabbinic scholar of the Congregation Kilat Jujorin in New York between 2014 to 2017. He would get various different rabbinic studies and accolades. He, especially in Yeshiva College, his MA, the Bernard Revel Graduate School of Jewish Studies, also the Azrieli Graduate School of Jewish Education and Administration, and his, I believe, rabbinical ordination was from the Rabbi Isaac Elchanan Theological Seminary of Yeshiva University. He's published 150 scholarly articles, primarily in Hebrew Bible, and author. He is an editor of 20 books. And I think his scholarship focuses especially on interaction between traditional and academic approaches to Bible study. I think there's a rabbi named Rabbi Yaakov Beasley, in a view of Rabbi Angel's works and methodology in April 2018, refers him to as one of the great Tanakh teachers of our time. Tanakh obviously being the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, respectively. So he was a key rabbi over there. Now let's speak of famous Chazan in America. We haven't spoken about them, especially the Spanish-Portuguese community. Someone named Chazan Abraham Lopez Cardozo. He lived between 1914 to 2006. He was famously the Chazan of the Congregation She'erit Israel the Spanish Portuguese synagogue in New York City. He was actually born in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and he's a great grandson of the chief rabbi of the Sephardic community of Amsterdam, another rabbi spoken about on various occasions before, Rabbi Joseph Lopez Cardozo, a musician, and would lead the boys' choir of Spanish Portuguese. Rabbi Abraham read his first Haftarah at the age of 7 years old only, and he attended the famous Etz Chaim seminary in Amsterdam. In 1939, he was appointed by Queen Wilhelmina to be the rabbi of the Sephardic community of Suriname. He would meet his wife, Rabbanit Irma there. He became assistant Chazan at Sheretz Yisrael in 1946. Later, he became the Chazan and continued there for a staggering 50 years to 1986. He was also took on a various faculty member of Yeshiva University Sephardic program, and he taught Sephardic Chazanut. And if I'm not mistaken, on the 7th of June 2000, he was invested as a Knight of the Order of Orange Nassau by Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands. Interesting enough. Now, another famous rabbi in America, Sephardic rabbi, was Rabbi Albert Abraham Gabbai. I think he's now currently Rabbi Emeritus of the Sephardic Synagogue Congregation of Israel since 1988. The synagogue itself was founded in 1740 and the second oldest active congregation in the United States of America. He would actually be part of Yeshiva University, if I'm not mistaken. He would be predecessor. The next leader was Rabbi Joshua Toledano, if I'm not mistaken, and he would live in Philadelphia. He would actually receive his rabbinic coordination from the Sheheba Sephardic Center, if I'm not mistaken. He was actually from Cairo, if I'm not mistaken, and he was 18 years of age at the time of 1967, the Six-Day War. So I think he was born in the year 1949. And he would be in Egypt, if I'm not mistaken, then go to France at a later stage. He was actually born in Egypt in 1949, if I'm not mistaken. His father, I think, was born in Baghdad to a family of rabbis. He came from a great rabbinic family, if I'm not mistaken. And his mother came from Leghorn, I think in Italy they originated from. His maternal grandmother was born in Salonika in Greece, and the family, I think, spoke Ladino. He was one of 10 children in the Gabbai family. He was one of 8 boys, if I'm not mistakenly, and he would attend the Collège de La Salle in a French Catholic school, and he would sing in the famous choir of the Sha'ar HaShamayim synagogue, if I'm not mistaken. He would later on attend Yeshiva University. I think between 1983 to 1986, he was assistant Chazan of Congregation Sheretz Yisrael. And the Congregation of Sheretz Yisrael is the Spanish Portuguese synagogue, the oldest Jewish congregation in the United States of America. He would then travel to Jerusalem and would learn at the Sheheba Sephardic Center under Rabbi Sam Kassin, and was ordained a rabbi in Sephardic tradition. And he was a spiritual and musical student of Rabbi Abraham Lopez Cardozo. I think since 1988, Rabbi Gabbai had been the rabbi of the Spanish-Portuguese Congregation Mikveh Israel in Philadelphia. It's interesting, now a current rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Zarnigian, came to Mikveh Israel as assistant rabbi in 2021, where he trained under Rabbi Gabbai's tutelage and succeeded him in 2023. And Rabbi Gabbai was named Rabbi Emeritus in 2023 and remains active in the congregation and community. And Rabbi Gabbai himself is fluent in more than 6 languages, and he is a member of the Board of Governors of Gratz College in himself. He's written many books. A Land of Promise, Time is in Our Hands, and is the menu of the Shabbat meals affected by preceding Shabbat of Tisha B'Av in of itself, respectively, so over there. So very, very interesting. So yes, so we spoke already about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. So we won't speak more about him. Let's now speak about various different important bodies in the United States of America, especially in the 1900s at the start. Obviously, the famous Orthodox Union. Now, anyone staying in live at the moment, please wait a minute. I'm going to take a short break for 1 minute, and I'm going to come back and just hold on the moment. I'll be back in 1 minute, friends, over here. Taking a short break over here. So please don't go anywhere and stay on the channel.
Social media. Original.
Yeah, I'm filming now live. I'm doing the history of America.
YouTube, cover.
Yeah, if you give my name and join the channel.
Join the channel, what's the one?
It's live video.
So, go on, what you want? YouTube.
So just join Team Research.
No, a couple of years ago. How old am I? I'm 39. I feel like I'm 17.
So where are you originally?
I was in Manchester. There you go. So we live in Norfolk. No, just what? Look now.
Filming America all the time. Yeah, so I was working on America.
I write it down to yourself. You know it's one event. So what school were you going?
I was
She was in Crawley.
Yes, I was at home.
That's a film there also. Well, Target Rock.
Oh, yeah, it was much time.
Yes, I went to a hotel.
Jesse Hall.
Yeah, I don't know Jesse Hall.
Nice to see you. See you in the good places. All the best.
Take care.
Okay, thanks everyone for waiting over here as we are exploring the history, friends, over here of the Jewish community of the United States of America here on the special edition over here. Let's continue. We're going to now start speaking about the Orthodox Union over here, also known as OU. It was founded all the way back in 1898. And the OU supports a network of synagogues, youth programs, Jewish and religious Zionistic, let's say, advocacy programs in of itself over there. And the OU maintains a kashrut certification service with a U Heksher symbol. That's something we have to point out. And then let's explore within regards to Orthodox Union. I think it was founded as a lay synagogue originally in 1898 by Rabbi Henry Herrera Mendez. Interesting enough, its founding members were, let's say, more modern, Western educated Orthodox rabbis and lay leaders, of whom were affiliated originally, I think, to Jewish Theological Seminary which originated, we have to point out, as an Orthodox institution to combat reform movement. Obviously, later on, there was cracks between the OU and the JTS, which first formed in 1913, when Solomon Schechter decided all alums of the institution would be allowed to apply for, let's say at that point in time, managerial positions in the newly created United Synagogue of America, I think at that point in time. And there was a key rabbi, Rabbi Frederick de Sola Mendes, advocated that only strictly pious ones should be so approved. I think only then, it reported over, Rabbi Mendes began to distinguish between conservative and modern Orthodox Judaism in his diary, though he could not articulate the difference so much at that stage in time. Remember, conservative at that stage, I think, was much more on the right than it is now. The OU, the JTS, and the RIETS were closely connected, with alumnus of the latter two serving in the former communities until the post-war era. Only around 1950 did conservative and modern Orthodox Judaism fully coalesce as opposing movements at that point in time in a full movement in of itself. So let's talk about the development of the OU, the Orthodox Union, also respectively over here. So I think during the early decades of its existence, Orthodox Union was closely associated with, at that point in time, and supported the development of Yeshiva University into significant Jewish educational institution. They produced very much English-speaking university-trained American rabbis for the pulpits of the OU synagogues. Some Orthodox rabbis were, I think, viewed at that point in time as nascent OU, and the rabbis of the synagogues as too modern, maybe in outlook, let's just say in itself. Thus, they did not participate. Instead, they set up more stringent rabbinical organizations at that point in time. But the idea for a national Orthodox congregation body took hold. The OU was soon acknowledged within the American Jewish establishment, let's say at that point in time, as the main, but not exclusively, mouthpiece for the American Orthodox community. Representatives of 150 Orthodox congregations, with an estimated membership at that point in time of 50,000, participated in OU's 1919 National Convention. The OU became more active in broader American Jewish community policy, I think, especially in 1924. I think Rabbi Herbert S. Goldstein was an innovative spiritual leader of the West Side Institutional Synagogue of Manhattan, became the president of OU at that point in time. And under Goldstein, the OU and its rabbinical foundation became a founding, I think, let's just say, in the Rabbinical Council, become a founding member of the Synagogue Council of America. I think there was also representatives of reform and conservative movements and their rabbinical affiliates. The OU played an active role in advocating for public policies improvement to Orthodox practice, such as advocating for the 5-day work week and defending the right to kosher slaughter. It was involved in efforts to serve the religious needs of Jewish American soldiers and relief of European Jewry. Let's speak a bit about the kashrut now over here. I think in the 1920s, the OU started its kashrut division. They established the concept of community-sponsored, non-profit kashrut supervision in 1923. The H.J. Heinz Company's vegetarian beans, it happens to be, that was the first product, interesting enough, to become kosher certified by the OU. Company executives, I think Heinz, were afraid of alienating non-Jewish customers. Because of this, after much negotiation, the OU agreed to drop the word kosher from the initial design in favor of the, let's say, less Jewish-sounding OU symbol over there at that point in time. And the OU's kashrut program was heavily influenced by someone named Abraham Goldstein. He was a chemist who used his knowledge of food science to determine the kosher status of various products. In 1935, Rabbi Goldstein left OU and started organized kashrut laboratories, OK. The wide acceptance of OU kashrut supervision rested largely, let's say, upon the outstanding reputation of a rabbinic administrator, someone named Rabbi Alexander Rosenberg, or Alexander S. Rosenberg. He and his staff established effective kashrut supervision and standards for modern food and production of technology, which allowed the ability of OU certified packaged kosher products across the United States since the 1950s over there. So very interesting. I think come with the mid-1930s, OU kashrut division had matured enough to influence and challenge the traditional local rabbinic sole practitioner kashrut supervision model. At the time, kashrut was a profitable business for rabbis, and the OU sought to make kashrut freely available to reduce consumer costs of keeping kosher. So anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history of the United States of America. Jury over here, so please, if you're live at the moment, subscribe to the channel over here. I'd really appreciate it. Now let's talk about the mid-century. The OU Women's Branch, Orthodox Union Women's Branch, also organized during the 1920s to encourage the formation and support active sisterhoods in OU synagogues. A women's branch took on particularly products typically related to Jewish education and support for Yeshiva University. I think OU operations became more efficient with appointment, let's just say, in 1939, Leo S. Hiltonrad as its first full-time professional executive director, and its services were further expanded, I think, in 1946, adding, let's say, Saul Bernstein to the professional staff. I think Bernstein became the founding editor in 1951 of Jewish Life, the OU's popular publication of Orthodox laymen, and Robert Bernstein, I think, succeeded Hilsrand as OU's administrator. I think it was during post-war wars, I think especially in late leadership of the Orthodox Union and Yeshiva University, the Orthodox Union would expand its operations following the election in 1954 of Moses Feuerstein as its president. Its leadership ranks were augmented by a talented group of lay leaders, including someone named Joseph Karasik, Harold Jacobs, Julius Berman, who would guide, I think, the OU's growth over the next several decades. Other significant developments would actually occur. In 1959, Rabbi Pinchas Stopler was the director of the Orthodox Union's youth group, the National Conference of Synagogue Youth it was, by NCSY, inspiring thousands of public school educators at the high school across North America to become more observant. NCSY would play a major role in launching the Baal Teshuva movement, a widespread spiritual reawakening among Jewish youth following 1967 Six-Day War. I think the OU board of directors obviously had female members, especially since the 1970s, mid-1970s. By the mid to late 19th century, most synagogues affiliated with the OU, Orthodox Union, were under the leadership of rabbis trained by Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik at Yeshiva's University, the Rabbi Isaac Elchanan Theological Seminary. These rabbis were ideologically more modern Orthodox, you could say. Now, by the 1990s and early 21st century, the OU's general philosophy and observance, let's say, levels had shifted, let's say, more towards a stricter interpretations and halachic practices. This change had not necessarily affected individual member congregations, but impacted many Orthodox Jewish communities across America, let's just say in general. The general trend towards more rigid practices among OU, Orthodox Union, reflects, let's say, American Orthodoxy's trend more towards ultra-Orthodox Haredi Judaism in itself. Now, I think come the year 2009, Rabbi Stephen Whale would succeed Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb as OU's executive vice president and was succeeded by Alan Fagin in April 2014. In 2011, Rabbi Simcha Katz became president and was succeeded by Rabbi Moshe Bain in January 2017. In 2014, the first women were elected as national officers of OU. I think at that point in time, 3 female national vice presidents and 2 female associate vice presidents were elected, if I'm not mistaken, over there. I think come on June 2018, Attorney General Jeff Sessions would speak at OU Advocacy Center's annual conference in Washington. Very interesting enough. So in 2020, Rabbi Moshe Hio became the executive vice president, along with Robert Josh Joseph, if I'm not mistaken, over there. And Robert Joseph, I think, responsible, let's say, to the organization's programs and operations aside from Kashrut Division. The CEO of which is Rabbi Menachem Ginek, and the president is Mitchell Adir. They've had many presidents, OU have, over the years. And most certainly the founding president, Rabbi Henry Pereira Mendes, who we spoke about before, Rabbi Bernard Drachman, later on Rabbi Herbert Goldstein, Charles Shapiro, we're just mentioning a few of them, Rabbi Joseph Karasik, Harold Jacobs, Julius Berman, Sidney Questel, who was a professor, Harvey Blitz, for example, many, Martin Nachmanson, Moshe Bain, who we mentioned about. There was others also. I haven't mentioned all of them. Mitchell Eder, I think, more recent point in time now. Let's talk a bit about they would have an alliance with the Rabbinical Council of America, we have to point out. I think for many years it was that the Orthodox Union, along with its related rabbinic arm, the Rabbinical Council of America, they would work with larger Jewish community in Synagogue Council of America. And I think in this group itself, the Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform groups work together on issues of joint concern. And the group obviously became defunct, I think, in 1994, mainly over objections of especially the Orthodox groups to Reform Judaism's official acceptance of a patrilineal descent as an option for defining Jewishness, as I say, in itself. Let's talk a bit about the Kashrut a bit more. The Orthodox Union's kosher division, headed obviously currently by the CEO Menachem Genik, is the world's largest kosher certification agency. As of 2023, it supervises 1,200,000 products in 13,000 plants in 105 countries, if I'm not mistaken. 200,000 of these products are found in the US. Reported over, they would employ 886 rabbinic field representatives, mashgichim in Hebrew, and about 70 rabbinic coordinators who serve as account executives for OU certified companies. They are supplemented, I think, by a roster of ingredient specialists, flavor analysts, and other supportive staff, if I'm not mistaken. The supervision process involves sending a mashgiach to the production facility to ensure that the product complies with Jewish law. Obviously, the mashgiach supervises ingredients and production process over there. We can speak more about NCSY. Let's just speak about them for a minute. They were founded in the early 1950s, and I think NCSY succeeded under Rabbi Pinchas Stopler, and really, as we said before, they would target, let's just say, American Jewish youth in the public schools at that point in time, and really has expanded its reach, mainly among religious, mostly modern Orthodox children attending Jewish day schools also. The Orthodox Union Advocacy Center, what is that over here, friends? I think it's a non-partisan public policy arm of the OU, leading the organization's advocacy efforts in Washington. And they would do huge amounts, if I'm not mistaken. There's OU advocacy groups which engages leaders at all levels of government and broader public, if I'm not mistaken, to promote and protect Orthodox Jewish communities' interests and values in the public policy arena. Now, synagogue affiliation of the OU is huge. The OU requires that all member synagogues follow Orthodox Jewish interpretations of Jewish law and tradition. Men and women are seated separately. Nearly always are separated by a mechitza, a physical, let's say, divider in of itself between the men's and women's sections of the synagogue. Now, many OU synagogues support the concept of religious Zionism, which teaches that the existence of the State of Israel is a step towards the arrival of Mashiach and the eventual return of all Jews around the world to live in ancient national Jewish homeland. The laws of Shabbat and Kashrut are obviously stressed over, and the prayer in Hebrew, very interesting. We use the traditional text, obviously, of the Siddur, which has been used by Sephardic, Ashkenazic Jewish communities in the last few centuries. Until the 1980s, the most popular English translation of the prayer book used in the OU synagogue had been the Siddur HaShalem, which was edited by the famous Philip Birnbaum. In recent years, there was a popular RCA, Rabbinic Council of America edition of Art Scroll Siddur and the Koren Siddur are used. And the most common Hebrew English Chumash used by the Pentateuch and Haftarahs, edited by Rabbi Joseph H. House. In recent years, it's been supplanted by a Chumash, the Stone Edition, also known as the Art Scroll Chumash. Basically, another organization connected with the Orthodox Union is Yachad. What is Yachad? It's the National Jewish Council for Disabilities. It's a global organization dedicated to addressing the needs of Jewish people with disabilities and ensuring their inclusion in every aspect of Jewish life. And the inclusion, let's just say, aims to ensure that persons with diverse abilities have their rightful place within the Jewish community, while it helps to educate and advocate in the Jewish world for greater understanding, acceptance, outreach, and a positive attitude towards let's say, disabled persons. Let's just say in itself, that's something we should point out. Now, let's speak about one of the presidents, Harold Jacobs. He was a key figure in America. He lived between 1912 to 1995, key in the OU. He was a Jewish civic leader. He headed a number of Jewish organizations and played a significant role in New York City educational affairs. He was actually born in Williamsburg's section of Brooklyn, And he was the second of 4 children to Max Jacobs. He himself lived between 1883 to 1978. He was an immigrant of Austro-Hungary. Very interesting enough itself. He was, I think Max and Kate themselves, his mother, was active in Jewish community affairs. He helped found the synagogue, the Young Israel Eastern Parkway, and the first mikveh in Crown Heights, the, let's say, Brooklyn neighborhood, to which Mr. Jacobs' family relocated in 1930s. Mr. Jacobs went to elementary school. He attended Torah V'Da'at, the first all-day Orthodox Jewish school in the neighborhood. For his high school education, like many of his peers, he attended a boys' high school, supplemented by private tutoring in Judaic subjects. And he would have a huge role in Brooklyn Jewish communal life. Mr. Jacobs was deeply devoted to the importance of preserving, let's just say, Orthodox Jewish life in the face of pressures to assimilate at that stage in time. It was a huge threat. He was committed to principles that it was possible to be simultaneously maintain religious observant lifestyle and participate in American society. This wasn't, let's say, an easy task, because it was an era when there was a blue laws which discouraged Shabbat observance. Few kosher products were available at that point in time, especially in supermarkets. Mr. Jacobs served in leadership roles in various Orthodox institutions. He was the president of Young Israel of Eastern Parkway between 1949 to 1953. He was the president of the Orthodox Crown Heights Yeshiva in 1953 to 1968, and even helped lead a local Shabbat observant Boy Scout troop. He became an officer and eventually president of the Brooklyn Jewish community. I think he also, if I'm not mistaken, was the president of the Brooklyn Jewish Community Council, and served on the board of directors, if I'm not mistaken, of the Torah V'Da'at and Chaim Berlin day schools. He would chair annual dinners of local Lubavitcher and Bobova yeshivot and the Brooklyn Joint Passover Committee, and served as a vice president of Yeshiva of Eastern Parkway. Now, the Jewish Press, which is a Brooklyn-based Jewish newspaper, remarked in 1966 that Jacobs was active in every major and minor Jewish organization in Brooklyn. Mr. Jacobs' involvement in Brooklyn's Jewish community life was so extensive that he was widely known as the mayor of Crown Heights. I think beginning in 1952, Mr. Jacobs assumed a leading role in Orthodox community's campaign for the abolition of New York State's Blue Law, which maintained the closing of business on Sundays. As chairman of the Joint Committee for a Fair Shabbat Law, Mr. Jacobs led delegations of Jewish leaders at that point in time to Albany, if I'm not mistaken, to lobby legislators on the issue, and worked hard to mobilize Christian support for the abolition of the law. Mr. Jacobs utilized his contacts in Madison Club, for example, the key local Democratic Party branch in Brooklyn, to advance the Shabbat law at that point in time. And very, very interesting. The campaign represented one of the earliest organized forays by Orthodox Jews in the world of American political lobbying. They achieved a partial victory in 1963 when the state legislature agreed to permit businesses in New York City to open on Sundays. 2 years later, the rule was extended to the rest of the state, if I'm not mistaken. So, very much. Anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history of the United States of America, the Jewish community. So please join the channel and subscribe to the channel. Let's now speak a bit about the RCA, the Rabbinical Council of America. What is it? Organization of Orthodox Rabbis. It's affiliated with the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations of America, most commonly obviously known as the OU. It is one of the two main professional rabbinical organizations within the modern Orthodox in the USA, along with the International Rabbinic Fellowship. Many rabbis of the RCA are graduates of the Rabbi Isaac Elchanan Theological Seminary, we have to point out over here, which is very, very interesting, or otherwise identify with modern Orthodox Judaism, let's just say. Now, let's speak about the history of it. The roots of the organization go back to 1923, when it was founded as a RCA, the Rabbinical Council of Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations of America, and obviously to promote Orthodox Judaism in the United States. Its members attempted on a number of occasions to merge with other Jewish groups, let's just say the purpose was of developing a unified traditional rabbinate for American Jewry. A number of attempts were made to join with groups such as Agudat Israel, but were rebuffed at various points in time. A merger would take place in 1935 between the RCA, Rabbinical Council of Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations, and other Orthodox rabbinical groups. The Rabbinical Association of the Rabbi Isaac Elchanan Theological Seminary was a part of Yeshiva University. It will merge a combined group to take the name Rabbinical Council of America, and come up 1942, the Hebrew Theological College alumni merged with the RCA, and I think in latter years the RCA attempted to merge with another Orthodox rabbinical group, the Rabbinical Alliance of America, but I think this attempt would actually fail. There was also temporary adoption of the Orthodox Roundtable that was abandoned in 1991, and the RCA leadership will try and censor the group, I think. Most members of Rabbinical Council of America are actively working as pulpit rabbis. A significant minority are working in Jewish education now. The famous Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik would play a huge role, I believe, in RCA until he died in 1993. For many years, RCA was led by Rabbi Stephen Dworkin, who served as an executive vice president until he passed away in January 2003. And it was then headed by Rabbi Basil Herring, who previously served as director of the Orthodox Forum. And I think come on September 2012, the RCA announced that Rabbi Herring was transitioning to the position of editor-in-chief of the RCA publications, and Rabbi Mark Dratch would take over as EVP at that point in time. I think in more recent times, if I'm not mistaken, so that's very interesting. I think they established an English quarterly journal called Tradition, Journal of Orthodox Jewish Thought, if I'm not mistaken, over there. So let's speak about some key rabbis towards in the 20th century, respectively, at that point in time. Some key rabbis that will make. And then I think in the next session we'll also speak about key rabbis also. Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, we should mention about, or to give his full title, Rabbi Yitzchak Feidish Ginsburg. He was actually born in 1944. He's referred to as a Malach, the angel. He's an American-born Israeli rabbi, so he's American once again, affiliated with Chabad movement. I think in 1996, he was regarded as one of Chabad's leading authorities on Jewish mysticism. He is a leader of Derech Hayim movement, if I'm not mistaken, a founder of the Gal Einai Institute, which publishes his written works. His studies include, let's say, ultra-Orthodox books, religious Zionists, Chabad Hasidim, as well as Balei Teshuva. He's currently the president of a number of educational institutions, including Odious V'chai Yeshiva in the settlement of Yitzhar of the West Bank. He's lectured in various countries and throughout Israel. So he's a key rabbi, a very broad and the breadth rabbi in himself. He was born in Missouri. He currently is 81 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And he learned in the famous yeshiva. He was part of Yeshivat Tom Vadat, if I'm not mistaken. He's president. He's the Derech Chaim movement. He's part of very much. He's also got many roles. I think currently lives in Kfar Chabad, if I'm not mistaken. He's also a musician and a composer. And he's got many students, including Torah scholars, academics, and musicians. And it's a very, very much key figure. Another key rabbi at the moment in America is Rabbi Eli Abadi. Let's speak about him now, also because he was key, especially in the late 1900s. He is a former director of the Jacob E. Safra Institute Sephardic Studies of Yeshiva University, especially within the Sephardic Judaism. He's got a huge interest in history, philosophy, and comparative traditional law. And currently, I think he's a senior rabbi of the Association of Gulf Jewish Communities and a senior rabbi in residence of the Jewish Community Center of the UAE, respectively. I think he, if I'm not mistaken, he's a member of the board of American Sephardi Federation and the World Sephardic Educational Center and co-president of the Justice for Jews from Arab Countries. He is a former member of the board and an officer of the Rabbinical Council of America, the treasurer and the vice president of the New York Board of Rabbis, and the co-chair of the Sadat Congregational Gold Medal Committee, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was one of the founding rabbis, if I'm not mistaken. He became a rabbi of Edmund J. Safra more on the 2001 spectrum. He was founding rabbi of the Sharei Mizrach Manhattan East Synagogue and the head of school of the Sephardic Academy of Manhattan, and the spiritual leader of the Moïse Safra community in Manhattan. From 2003 to 2017, he was founding rabbi and spiritual leader of Edmund J. Safra Synagogue in New York City, obviously now known as the Congregation Beit Edmund, one of the largest Sephardic synagogues in New York. I think currently he's the president of the JJAC, as we mentioned, that Jews for Justice of Arab Communities. He's a member of the governing council of the World Zionist Organization. He is a founder of the Sephardic Academy of Manhattan and served as director of the Jacob E. Safra Institute of Sephardic Studies at Yeshiva University and college professor of Sephardi Judaism, history, philosophy, and comparative traditional law. So he definitely is a key current figure, especially in America. Let's speak about more famous American rabbis over here. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community over here. Let's just do a quick questionnaire. I want to ask the people watching live at the moment if you guys live in America at the moment. So that will be, I think, an interesting question. I think it's good to come about to ask questions over here. And let's see how we do this at the moment. I want to get more people watching live at the moment. Yes, that's very interesting. I'm not too sure actually how to answer questions. Start a poll. Do you live in America? So we're going to ask you, fantastic people over here. Do you live in America? Because you happen to be. So we don't usually do polls on this live video, but I think that we're doing a live video here. Let's do this, and yeah, please, anyone answer over here. This is the poll that we're doing. Okay, so we've started this poll over here. So let's see who's living in America. If you're tuning in live at the moment, welcome to our community over here. Okay, let's speak about Rabbi Yisrael Belsky, or to give his full title, another famous rabbi in America during this time, Rabbi Chaim Yisrael Halevi Belsky. He lived between 1938, passed away January the 28th, 2016. Obviously, he was a great posek in America. He was at that point in time. He was one of the Rosh Yeshivot of Yeshivat Torah V'Da'at, and also rabbi of the summer camp run by Agudat Yisrael of America. We have to point that out over here. He was actually born in New York. He died in New York also. His wife is Robertson Miriam, I believe. So he would serve for more than 28 years as a senior kashrut advisor of the Orthodox Union. He was also a member of the Igud HaRabbanim, or the Bet Din, under Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Leibs, and Rabbi Baruch Lazarowski, and Rabbi Herschel Kozorok, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, let's just say, I think, yeah, very, very interesting. His first kashrut position, I think, was with the Kof K. This was, I think, in 1987, he transferred to the Orthodox Union. He was described, I think, if I'm not mistaken, as a key figure over there. If I'm not mistaken. So he was described, that was, I think, then the largest Jews in the United States. And yeah, very interesting. And he would serve as a rabbi of the summer camp also network run by the Agudat Yisrael of America at one point in time. In September 2005, he was a keynote speaker at the Igud HaRabbanim annual Siyum Hashas, and the event doubled as a Chag Smicha, where 35 Rabbi Belsky students would receive their rabbinical ordination certificates at that stage in time over here. So that's something we had to point out. Okay, another key rabbi in America during this point in time was Rabbi Nachum Zev or Velvel Dessler. He lived between 1921 to January the 21st, 2011. He was an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, as well as a founder and dean of the famous Hebrew Academy of Cleveland. He was actually born in Lithuania, if I'm not mistaken, and he would have great children called Reuven, Eli, Simcha, Sedika, Malki, Apeshi. His father was Rabbi Eliezer Dessler, if I'm not mistaken. And he would begin, I think, the organization in 1943. He would receive rabbinic coordination by famous rabbis, including Rabbi Eliyahu Meir Bloch and Rabbi Chaim Mordechai Katz, if I'm not mistaken. Now, he was instrumental in building the National Society for Hebrew Day Schools. He was actually born in 1921 in Kelm, and his mother, Bluma, was a granddaughter to Rabbi Simcha Zissel Ziv. Very famous, so in of itself. I think, He would live in London and become really a great rabbi over there. Another key rabbi that would make his mark in America, another Sephardi rabbi, was Rabbi Chaim Musa Dweck. Let's speak about him for a minute. He lived between 1905 to 1975. He was the last chief rabbi also of Egypt. Let's explore a bit about his career. He was actually born, Rabbi Dweck was, from a Kohanim family of priests in Anteb in Turkey, on the border of Syria. He was the eldest child of Rabbi Musa Chaim Dweck and Zarifta. I think when he was only 5, his family moved to Cairo. He would attend the Alliance Israelite Universal School System over there and the Jewish Studies program called Keter Torah after school. He studied for the rabbinical degree from 1918 to 1933 at the great yeshiva Keter Torah in Cairo. He would study under Rabbi Yosef Pinto and Rabbi Chaim Nachum Effendi, who was a chief rabbi at that point in time. He was ordained as a rabbi in 1933. He was one of the founders of the famous, well-known Ahava synagogue, I think in Cairo. The government considered the synagogue a Zionistic stronghold and closed it in 1957. Now, his rabbinical position at the synagogue included the teaching of Torah to students, including famous people like Maurice Dayan, the chief rabbi Lil, Rabbi Maurice Dayan, and France, Rabbi Joseph Hayon, who will become the chief rabbi of Baraneklia in Colombia, and Rabbi Masoud Elbaz, who will become the chief rabbi of Sudan, a rabbi we've spoken about before here on this series, Rabbi Jacob Nefosi, who will become the great grand rabbi of Alexandria, Rabbi Joseph Hamoy, another great rabbi, who will become a great rabbi in Brooklyn. And so he would actually ordain, nurture many of the great American rabbis later on. Rabbi Chalfon Sabti will become the rabbi of the Ahava in Brooklyn. They have the synagogue. Come on, 1952, Rabbi Dweck was appointed by the chief rabbi of Egypt, Rabbi Chaim Nachum Effendi, to join the rabbinical body of Cairo's chief rabbinate. And in 1954, he was appointed the chairman of the Bet Din, the Jewish rabbinical court. He was also appointed by the Egypt Ministry of Justice as a judge in the Jewish primary and appellate courts, which were a division, let's say, of the Jewish domestic relations courts at that point in time. Interesting enough, King Farouk was removed from power in 1952 during a revolution that placed Gamal Abdel Nasser in power. I think come January 1956, he abolished a domestic relations court and required all decisions be made in a civil court instead of a religious court. The Egyptian Ministry of Justice would appoint Rabbi Dweck as a notary delegate in charge of all matters affecting the personal relations of Jews. This would include, at that point in time, authority on issues involving marriage, divorce, wills, children, assets, disposition of assets. There was also the rabbinical authority designated to issue all official documents from the chief rabbinate at that stage in time. I think come September 1956, Rabbi Dweck was appointed as the deputy to chief rabbi, I think at that one time, Rabbi Chaim Dweck, and succeed him as who recommended that Rabbi Chaim Dweck would succeed as the chief rabbi. So when Rabbi Chaim Nachum Effendi, I think, died in November 1960, Rabbi Chaim Dweck would become the chief rabbi of that Jewish community. At that time, the number of Jews in Egypt was around only 10,000 people. Because of the political environment, Rabbi Dweck continued to preside in the community that was emptying out at that stage in time, and many would come to the United States of America. I think it was on June the 5th, 1967, during the Six-Day War with Israel, Rabbi Dweck and his family were ordered to go to the offices of the chief rabbinate, and they were held under house arrest for 2 weeks without outside contact. And very interesting. I think, so it was about the Six-Day War would further accelerate the decline of the Jewish community. In 1968, there were only 2,000 Jews in Egypt, down from 80,000 20 years earlier. Rabbi Dweck met with Egyptian politicians and dignitaries from around the world to obtain relief for the Egyptian Jews as they could leave the country. After 3.5 years, all detainees were released and permitted to leave Egypt with their families. Come 1971, there were only 300 members of the community over in 1971. Many of these were families with young children. Rabbi Dweck advised them leave Egypt since he saw no future there for the families. Rabbi Dweck led Egypt's Jewish population during a period of political turmoil and instability. I think at that point in time, he would leave originally to France in 1972, and then he made sure the remaining Jews had their religious needs met. There was a chazan, there was a shochet over there, and there was someone to assist with in regards to Kaddish, I believe, funeral services. He He made sure there was kosher wine and matzot for Pesach. He would immigrate in October 1972 to New York. In New York, Rabbi Dweck became very active in the Egyptian community under Ahava Ve'ahva congregation over there. He became a key rabbi there. In addition, he became active in the plight of Syrian and Iraqi Jews of America who were persecuted in those countries, and he would devote much of his time, I believe, to raise awareness of their situation and help them leave those countries. He sadly died in Brooklyn on August 21st, 1974, and was buried in the Haras Eitim. His memorial collection of books was donated by his family to Yeshiva University in New York in 1984. So he wasn't in America for a long time, but towards the end of his life, he would become a prominent rabbi over there. So anyone you're tuning in live at the moment, welcome to our community here. Welcome, we are live, and please enjoy over here. Let's talk about more key rabbis now who made their marks in the United States of America. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes, I think, over here. From Mordechai Shlomo Friedman, who was he? He lived between 1891 to 1971, and he was the Boyana Rebbe of New York for over 40 years. I think in 1927 he left Europe to become one of the first Hasidic rabbis in America. He established his court on the Lower East Side of New York City, attracting many American Jewish youth with his charismatic and warm personality. He would play a role, I think, in American Jewish leadership with positions on the Agudat Yisrael America and the Moatzat Gedolei HaTorah and Holocaust rescue organizations. In 1957, he built the flagship Rus China Yeshiva, the Tiferet Yisrael, at the top of Malchei Yisrael Street in Jerusalem. In 1891, I think it was. So very, very interesting. So, he was a key rabbi over there. His father was Rabbi Yitzhak Friedman, another famous rabbi over there. I think he passed away in 1971 in the Brooklyn city. So that's something. So he was a boy in a row. Let's speak of another key rabbi in America at that point in time. Rabbi named Rabbi Nachum Dov Breya. Who was he? He lived. I think he's actually currently a very active rabbi. He was born in 1959. He is the Rebbe of the Boyan Hasidic dynasty and the grandson of the Boyana Rebbe, Rabbi Mordechai Shlomo Friedman. And when he was 25, he was crowned in the year 1984 on the first of Hanukkah, 41 years ago, as a Boyana Rebbe, and he currently lives now in Jerusalem. Another key rabbi, Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yisrael Friedman. He lived between November 1936 to April the 1st, 2020. He was a member of the Central Committee of Chabad Lubavitch Rabbis, and he was a Rosh Hashiva of the Oholei Torah Talmudic Seminary in Brooklyn, in New York. Very interesting. He was born in the Soviet Union. He died in Manhattan, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a rabbi of the Oholei Torah. What is Oholei Torah, first of all? It's a common name of the Lubavitch Schools Education Institution of Oholei Menachem, a Talmudic seminary of Oholei Torah, respectively. Have their offices, I think, in Brooklyn. There's a yeshiva, I think, for male students in the Chabad Lubavitch movement. They draw students from around all the world. More than 70% of graduates go on to life positions as shlichim, Chabad shlichim, initiating and directing Jewish activities in 75 countries. The curriculum consists solely of Torah study, with strong emphasis on Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerhausen's teachings over there. So that's a bit about the Oholei Torah, which you just mentioned about there. Another key rabbi in America at that point in time, Rabbi Mordechai Gifter. He was born in 1915. Passed away in 2001. He was an American Haredi rabbi. He was Rosh Hashiva of the famous Telz Yeshiva in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken. He would begin his rabbinic role, I think, over there maybe in 1964. And he studied in yeshivot in Lithuania and held several rabbinic positions in the United States. Now, another great rabbi itself is someone named Rabbi Yosef Greenwald. Who was he? He lived between 1903 and he died in 1984. He was the second rabbi of the Pupa Hasidic dynasty. I think before World War II, he was a rabbi and a Rosh Hashiva in Papa in Hungary, if I'm not mistaken. He would move to Williamsburg after the war and establish a contemporary Pupa Hasidic movement, if I'm not mistaken. I think then another key rabbi, Rabbi Yisrael Zev Gustman. He was born in 1908. He died in 1991. He was a rabbi. He was a last Dayan, rabbinic judge in Vilna during World War II. And he was a Rosh Hashiva in himself. His father was Rabbi Avram Tzvi Gustman, if I'm not mistaken. I think He was appointed Rosh Yeshiva at Yeshiva Tomchei Tmima, Lubavitch, in Brooklyn, New York, 1971. He would immigrate to Israel, where he established Netzach Yisrael and the Vilna Ramiles Yeshiva in the Rehavia neighborhood in Jerusalem. Especially on Thursday afternoons, he would give, especially most famously, an open high-level shiur in yeshiva attended by rabbis, intellectuals, religious court judges, the Supreme Court justice, and various professors. Interesting enough, so he was another key rabbi at that time. Now, Rabbi Naftali Yehuda Horowitz, another great rabbi in America, he's a Boston Rebbe, having succeeded his father, Grand Rebbe, Rabbi Levi Yitzhak Horowitz, the second Boston Rebbe. Upon the latter's death in December 2009, he's a rabbi, the Rebbe of the Boston Hasidic community from New England Hasidic Center in Brooklyn, in Massachusetts, built by his father. Interesting enough, he would begin his role over here as a rabbi there in December 2009. So he's another key rabbi, another great rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov Yitzhak Horowitz, who's a major American rabbi and an expert on kosher food production. He is once again a fourth generation American Hasidic rabbi, once again of the Boston Hasidic dynasty, and the founder of the American Jewish Legacy reported over. He's noted expert in Jewish law, particularly regarding to kosher code of production of matzot for Passover. He's associated with Manshevitz, the continent's largest producer of kosher food, where I think he has very much, let's just say, he's been supervising rabbi in the Manishkevitz group on companies on behalf of the Orthodox Union, and has been a course director of kosher workshop at Rutgers University recently. Now, another famous American rabbi making his mark is Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. He lived between 1891 to 1986. He was a prominent rabbi, Rosh Yeshiva, and a posek, and a great Talmudist in post-World War II, American Jewry especially. And he became the rabbi at Sibian in 1926. He moved to North America in 1937. He would initially take rabbinical positions in Seattle, and that was then 1938 to 1945 in Toronto. I think from 1948 to 1968, he would head the Metivta Torah Vadat in Brooklyn, New York City. After leaving the yeshiva, he moved to Monsey, New York, where he focused on publishing books. He was an expert in Hebrew grammar and an advocate for English language and Jewish religious books, and said that today English had become the language of Torah. Another key rabbi, Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky, he was born in 1924, famous American ultra-Orthodox rabbi, co-founder and Rosh Yeshiva of the Talmudic Yeshiva of Philadelphia, also known as Moetzet Gedolei HaTorah, that's to point out. And very interesting. I think he's currently 101 years of age. Bez Roshim will live to 120. He was part of the Bet Midrash Gavoa, Bnei Yisrael Rabbinical College also. And let's speak a bit about him. I think in the mid-1950s, very interesting. I think he was Rabbi Kotler's colleague, Rabbi Natan Meir Oshvitchko, would ask Rabbi Kamenetsky to help establish a yeshiva in Philadelphia, the Talmudic Yeshiva of Philadelphia in Strawberry Mansion neighborhood. I think come on 1956, Rabbi Schwartzman left to open his own yeshiva in Israel. And Rabbi Kamenetsky would choose Elias Svei as a co-Rosh Yeshiva. And this will continue until Rabbi Svei's death in March 2009. Rabbi Kamenetsky is a member of Moetzet Gedolei HaTorah of Agudat Yisrael of America, and serves on the rabbinical board of organizations including the Chinuch Atzmi, Torah Schools of Israel, Torah U'Masorah, the Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation, and the Association of Jewish Outreach Professionals over here. So that's very interesting. Let's talk about the famous Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. What is it? I think it was established in the year 1989. It's a non-profit Orthodox organization based in Monsey, New York. The foundation is dedicated to spreading the teachings of Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, also known as Chofetz Chaim, and the works obviously deals with the prohibition of gossip, slander, defamation, which are known as Lashon Hara in Jewish law. Its Shmirat HaLashon programs are in various Orthodox Jewish high schools, primarily attended by girls, let's just say in itself. Let's talk about the Talmudic Yeshiva of Philadelphia. It's an ultra-Orthodox Lithuanian yeshiva in Philadelphia, headed by Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky, Rabbi Shimon Yehuda Tzvei, Rabbi Shlomo Kamenetsky, respectively. It was founded in 1953. through Rabbi Aaron Kotler, a Rosh Yeshiva of the Bet Midrash Gavoa in Lakewood, New Jersey at the time, and Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky, Rabbi Dov Schwartzman. Interesting, the yeshiva purchased a building, I think, originally, and in August 1955, I think, come 1955, Rabbi Schwartzman left the yeshiva and was replaced with Rabbi Elias Tzvei. Come 1965 until 1985, Rabbi Yisrael Mendel Kaplan was one of the yeshiva's senior lecturers in of itself. Let's speak about Rabbi Yisrael Mendel Kaplan. He was born in 1913, passed away in 1985. He was obviously a famous rabbi, if I'm not mistaken. Apparently he was a member of he was a teacher in Hebrew Theological College of Chicago, and in the Talmudic Yeshiva of Philadelphia also. He was born in 1913, and he would arrive in San Francisco in 1946, then go to Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. He would have a teaching position over there, and he focused on the success of teaching Americans youth. He won students over by offering to teach them to read the Chicago Tribune, apparently reported over. And interesting enough, I think they would move to Brooklyn, Williamsburg at one point in time. He would start a Kaplan's Winery Corporation, producing traditional kosher Concord wine. Interesting enough, so that's very famous. In 1960, Rabbi Kaplan, he joined his family in New York and taught in a number of yeshivot, especially in Brooklyn's Yeshiva Torah Emet Kamenetz. And I think come 1965, he was invited to start teaching the first level post-high school class in Talmudic Yeshiva of Philadelphia. He would accept this position over there and would go commute, I think, to New York at that point in time. Rabbi Kaplan did not consider it beneath his dignity to fix his own car or pick up random hitchhikers from the side road. So he was known as a people's person also. And he would be at this Talmudic Yeshiva of Philadelphia, teach until April 4th, 1985, when he passed away. Very interesting enough. So very, very nice. Another key rabbi, Shlomo Nosson Kotler. He lived between 1856 and 1920. He was an Orthodox rabbi, a Talmudic scholar, a Torah author, and a posek. He was actually born in Lithuania, if I'm not mistaken. He was one of the first teachers of Knesset Yisrael Yeshiva in Slobodka. He was an Av Bet Din also of Uzbek. He would later on become, I think he would, former teacher of Joseph's, then the chief rabbi of New York City. He would be invited, Rabbi Kotler, to serve as Rabbi of Congregation Tiferet Yerushalayim in New York. Interesting enough, he would join the newly found Rabbi Isaac Elchanan Theological Seminary, also we have to point out, as a Rosh Yeshiva, let's just say. And and I think we're going to conclude in a minute. I think next off, I think we're going to conclude here for a few minutes. I just have to make a move now. It is getting quite late at the moment. You know, we'll just speak about Rabbi Abraham Hecht, who was a key rabbi also in America. He lived between 1922 to 2013. He was a Chabad affiliated rabbi. He was a president of the Rabbinical Alliance of America, the Igud HaRabbanim. He was known as a rabbi's rabbi, and he was one of America's most articulate Orthodox rabbinic leaders. He would become the rabbi, I believe, of the Syrian community in the congregation Sharei Tzion Syrian community, the largest Sephardic congregation in North America, comprising more than 3,500 families. Rabbi Hecht would serve the congregation for more than 50 years. He was known as a brilliant orator and inspired many within regards to teaching Torah, mitzvot, and was frequent contributor, let's just say, for over 50 years to various Jewish publications in English, Hebrew, and Yiddish. And he was an advocate for Mihu Yehudi, Givik Halacha, who is a Jew in of itself. He promoted awareness on behalf of family values, especially within the Jewish community, as well as in the largest population in of itself. So we're going to speak more about the congregation Sharei Tzion, which he was a rabbi of, in the next class over here. So what a session it was today. We nearly already 100 minutes of Torah, where we've spoken about the history of the Jewish community of the United States of America. But anyone tuning in live, please subscribe to the channel. We're a community over here exploring the history of the Jewish community of various countries over the world, and we do various different videos. So we're just going to go for a walk for a minute to talk about what we're doing over here. Very interesting. I'm just going to take a short break for 1 minute, and we're going to come back in half a minute, friends.
call my wife and ask her to speak to whatever, share their ideas and stuff. Might be unit for like 5-10 minutes. For hours
So that's why I asked you.
It's so funny now.
But if you want to just come to see you later.
Okay, thanks for everyone for waiting a moment as we are exploring the Jewish community history over here in the United States of America. So we're just going to leave with a final note, just once again urging all of you to join our community and subscribe to the channel over here, friends. We've spoken about Jewish history. We're probably going to record about another 2 videos on the history of the Jewish community of the United States of America. That's the plan. So we're not done yet. We want to now talk a bit more about some of the rabbis in the end of the 20th century and some of the rabbis that would shape American Jewry, especially let's just say at the start of the 21st century. So there is what to do still over here inside this series. So we have definitely not finished yet over here. So that's something I will definitely point out at the moment. I would like to go to different places each time we record these videos. We like to record these spontaneously. That's something I will definitely very much point out. Now, friends, we've already recorded on this channel about approximately 30 different countries, even more, maybe 32 different countries of yesteryear, which have great Jewish Torah communities in of itself. So that's the first thing I would like to point out over here about this channel. So thank God we've really been able to approach the histories and really diverge into what went on in various different locales and vicinities over the years here in across the globe itself. That's what we've got to point out. We've really covered most of the countries already in, I believe, in South America. If you recollect, we've recorded about many countries over there, and we have recorded about countries just all over the different vicinities. We are trying to really concentrate on America. We spoke about Central Americas, especially Panama, Costa Rica, and so on and so forth, other famous places of that point in time. That's something we'll definitely point out at the moment, and we continue to do this at the moment. We are an online encyclopedia. We've recorded already about 1,400 biography videos of great rabbis of yesteryear. So that's something else that we have to point out, and that's something that, once again, we are extremely proud about, and we'll continue doing this from so on and so forth. That's something that I will definitely point out here at the moment. So yeah, we will hopefully record the last 2 parts, maybe it might be 3 parts even, hopefully this week also. So I would recommend everyone that you watched to watch the previous parts that we recorded, and we're going to try and maybe make a separate section on the channel itself, stating over when the parts actually were, which actually section it happens to actually come from. So that's something that we are planning to do at the moment. So yeah. So as we are just coming in, we're just about to leave, so I want to leave with all you fantastic people at the moment. As I'm just recording this at the moment, I want to tell over just a few other projects that we're doing here inside the series, just to, as a promotion over here. I'm just going to leave and call it a day. Friends, we also record tours all over Israel. That's another project that we're working on at the moment, which I have to stress. And thank God we've already recorded nearly about 200 tours all over Israel. So I think on this note, we're going to call it a day. Wishing you all well and take care.